and welcome back to the AI Marketer's Playbook, where we cover actionable frameworks to help you leverage AI and marketing strategies in your business. I'm Audrey Chia, your host, and today I have with me Rachel Woods, CEO and co-founder of AMP, which stands for AI Momentum Protocols, an AI operations, education, and implementation firm helping businesses turn AI into an actual teammate. Now, Rachel has been working in AI for over 8 years and started her career as a research data scientist on Facebook's AI team even before most companies were talking seriously about AI. Now, she's also the person who coined and developed what is now known as AI operations and has trained more than 500 AI operators through her AI operator bootcamp. Rachel has been featured in Forbes, on Tony Robbins, and across major publications. But what I love most about her approach is that she's really technical, but also incredibly operational. So Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to see you. I'm so excited for this conversation. It's going to be a blast.
Awesome. Can you tell us a bit more about, your backstory? Now, I know you were working in AI long before the current AI wave. What first pulled you into the space?
Yeah, it's so funny. I feel like I was just a nerd, and then I became a cool nerd because the world started caring about what I was nerdy about, which is always convenient when that happens, right? And so when I first got into AI, was a little bit, I wouldn't say by chance, but I was mostly obsessed with how technology and business kind of came together and could solve problems. And I liked marketing a lot. And so whenever the job came up to be able to work at Facebook and their AI research team on the ads stack, as someone who likes those three things, I was just like, oh my gosh, dream job. Of course, I'm going to do this. Little did I know how much I would learn about, again, like AI and its capabilities then, not to mention how much the tech has progressed since. One of the things that blows my mind is I was using language models back in the day, but they weren't anything nearly as large and impressive as they are now, and just how the world has advanced.
Wow. And what do you think is the biggest change you have seen, besides the advancement of it? Has the way people use AI also changed along the way?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, whenever I started my career in AI, you would really have to have kind of a machine learning team, data scientists. It was like pretty technical build out to even start playing with this stuff. You'd also have to have all your own data centers and warehouses and all this stuff to train the models. And then maybe once you've set all that stuff up, then you could start experimenting and maybe get something kind of interesting and useful. And so there was so much of a startup cost to using AI. And then, now we can just be on our phones typing in to chat, asking AI to do completely new and novel things for us. So just a complete 180 of how accessible it is. And whenever ChatGPT came out, that ended up being my oh my gosh, this changes everything moment from an accessibility standpoint.
Wow. I'm curious to know, Rachel. So you coined the term AI operator, right? Tell us more. What exactly is it for folks who may not know?
Yeah. So I think that one thing that's really helped me is looking at AI as really being a very big umbrella space, right? There's tons of different ways you can use AI. There's AI in the more creative space, especially with like image generation and video. There's AI in the traditional sense with machine learning models and all the algorithms and stuff. And I, from both the AI background and I've also been an entrepreneur since the age of 15, I kind of fell in love with this use of AI in business to help it or help you operate better, right? To be able to think about what you want done and then to organize it in a way that then AI can help take that stuff off your plate. And so whenever we first started using AI in this way, in the systems and processes in the business, there really wasn't a word for it. This was back in early 2023. And I remember sitting down with my co-founder, who's my sister, and our team at the time. We were throwing all sorts of words up on the wall of should we call this AI workflow implementation? We're like, no, that's too specific. Or should we call it, there's just so many different types of words. And we finally this is just the new version of operations, right? Which is AI operations. And so that's why we decided to start calling it that. And then, of course, the hat that you wear when you're someone who is using AI for AI operations naturally lends itself to being the AI operator. And that's kind of how that all came to be. And it's been fascinating to see then, in just the last few years, how widely that's been picked up. And I love it. So.
Yeah, I saw so many folks who call themselves operators, so go-to-market operators for AI or fractional AI operators. It's very cool to know that you ladies were the one who started it all just from, an idea in your head.
Yeah, at least we sure did argue over what was going to be the best term that made sense for us. So this is what just what we started calling it. So
Awesome.
yeah.
But can you tell us a little bit more when you say operations? Because in a business, right, so many things, can be supported with AI. But what are some very tangible examples? So let's say you go into a new business now. What are some areas you look at?
Yeah. So when I think about AI operations, it's really just all of the systems and processes that power the business. So it is across every department, from marketing to sales to how you onboard clients or customers to the support you get, even to how you operationalize maybe your service so that you can efficiently deliver a service, all the way to your finance and HR or other planning functions. Operations really does touch all of those pieces. And so there are ways to look at the processes in each of those departments and then see, oh, okay, like we could either have people do this process, or how could we set it up so that AI can do it? And that's what we spend our time on, is like, how do you take a process that was being done by hand and now set it up so that AI can do it reliably? And our method that we use, we call it, is our playbooking method. So it's kind of funny because I'm on the Playbook, podcast, and obviously it's a word that's near and dear to both of our hearts. But that's what we call whenever we take a process and turn it into something that AI can do.
Wow, interesting. Given that there are so many functions where AI can support, right? How does a company even decide where do I begin? Because technically they have so many things they can do. Everything is possible, but at the same time, they might have to figure out where to start. And I'm sure there could be some hesitation, especially initially when they don't know what's going to happen and whether it's going to work or not. So where do companies begin?
So there's two ways to think about where to start. One is really focusing on the word operations, right? Which is, if we just took AI out of the equation, where would you invest in your operations? And you'd probably do it in the stuff that's going to have the highest impact. Or, if we solve this, we would have a breakthrough in the business and be able to do more or grow more. Those are the same types of areas that usually have really high impact AI operations projects, because it's really the same thing, just a new flavor. But maybe my more counterintuitive advice and observation from now doing this specific work for 3 years has been that actually, if you try to pick the best use case as your very first use case, you are overcomplicating what you need to actually be focused on, and you're going to go slower than if you instead just prioritize what's going to be the fastest way for us to get momentum and for us to learn. And so when we work with teams, we say, amazing, so glad that you have really high impact stuff that you want to use AI for. And great, let's put that second on the roadmap. The first thing we should do, though, is this is a whole new capability and mindset and way to think for a team of how to use AI, how to be the one defining what the AI does, how to check the AI's work. And so let's actually just start with the easiest possible, use case, or something that's still gonna be useful, but that gets the team momentum. And that way then everybody can learn, and then your second project goes so much better.
Oh, that's a very interesting perspective. I think people are always looking for like an ROI first kind of project, but like what you're saying is starting from the foundations. So Rachel, you talked a bit about the team, right? I'm curious to know, for a team, right, a team member, how do you actually teach them or upskill them so that they are comfortable using AI and they know when to use it?
Yeah, so what we've found is it's best to think about, again, this like AI operations bucket more as a capability that's going to be across all sorts of stuff that you're doing. And so it's kind of similar to the first time you learn to like write down a process or make a checklist. You want to give people the opportunity to playbook or create a process AI can follow for even just a small piece of their work. And once they have that first win, then it clicks, and then you can start using that momentum to do more and more things.
Interesting. And do you feel like a lot of team members are also resistant, or are they pretty open to adopting AI?
It varies. And what we found is the biggest indicator is not actually the person. It's more about the culture of the company.
Oh,
So I'll give you an example. So if you're somebody that is maybe hesitant about AI, but you work in a team where it's very clear that there's more than enough work, more than enough demand for what the company does. And so, okay, like I could see how if AI did some of these things I'm doing, there's tons of stuff that's now I can do instead. It's a lot easier for you to then lean into and trust that process versus, frankly, we do work with teams where I think it's very valid if you're sitting there and you're like, well, if AI is going to do half of my job, but we don't have more work for me to do. Then what? And so I think it's, like those are bigger culture and business viability questions. But if you have the demand and a really strong business, giving people and painting that path for them, we've seen people really open up.
Interesting. I also wanted to talk about maybe a slightly more sensitive topic, but I think it's also important to discuss. So in Singapore, recently we had a wave of layoffs from tech companies without a lot of warning. Some people found that they had no jobs the next day, and there was also like a sweeping statement that companies made about them using AI. Hence, some functions were no longer as necessary as before. So I was curious to know also, what are your thoughts on where does the person come in when AI can take over? Maybe not everything, but lots of functions that, like what you said, people used to do.
So with anything you're going to have AI take over, if you want to trust that it's doing a good job, you need somebody that has the judgment to define what good looks like. And that really is what we've seen is like the role that has to be human, has to be based on real expertise, has to be based on the background experience that someone has. Like that's how you have the judgment to even know whether the AI is doing a good job or not. So I think what's really challenging right now is there are a lot of companies that they're having to shift around their workforce because they are bringing in AI to some areas where then, one person can have a judgment and that actually covers 20 or 100 previous roles. Other places, though, it's you really have a closer like one-to-one relationship, right? Where it's like if one person's doing something and now AI comes in and helps with that, great, that one person can now do more.
Yep.
So I think if when I talk to anybody about how they can position themselves, I really ask like, what do you feel like you're really an expert in? Where do you have judgment? Where are you excited to build more judgment and more expertise over your career? That should be where you're investing your time and then learning how to be the AI operator that's running the AI that helps you amplify what you do.
Definitely. I think also for me, having that mindset of, okay, what is, like what you mentioned, the higher level skill set that can continuously value add to the team. What are the human skill sets that you definitely need that cannot be replaced? Perhaps even like relationship management, right? These are things that are one step above that you still need that human element. Then number 3, learning how to adopt AI or be comfortable with it so that when AI processes come into play, you don't feel too overwhelmed. Now, Rachel, going back to what you do, right? So you talked a bit about the playbook. Can you tell us just a snippet of what you cover in the playbook and how companies can go about their own processes?
Yeah, so in our world, playbooking is really a method for how to take a process and turn it into a process that AI can do. You can give these, it's really just a document that outlines the step-by-step of that process. And you can give that document to an AI in a chat tool. You can give that document to an AI agent. And you can even have systems of playbooks that are run by systems of agents. And so it's almost this like building block of defining what you want the AI to do and building your operations through writing these playbooks.
And when companies first came to you versus now, right, there has been like 3 to 4 years. Do you think there has been any change? Are they more ready compared to before?
Oh, completely. Yeah. And also the tech has changed a lot. So in the earlier days of even ChatGPT, when you started trying to have AI do more complex stuff, usually you had to go into automation tools, right? Like a Zapier or an N8N or like some of these more technical tools, and it just took longer to set all these things up. I'm curious if you're using like Claude skills and some of these things that have come into the scene in the last 6 months. I'm sure you're using it to the nth degree, but it's so much easier to set these things up now. The hard part is deciding what the process is in the first place. So I think not only the companies are more eager, but the tech also is so much easier now, which I think is really great.
Yeah, it has made it so much more accessible for non-technical folks. And I think one of the other, someone I was speaking to recently said, you don't have to be technical at all, Audrey. You just got to go for it and then see what you manage to build with AI.
Yeah, I think that the real hard part in the skill is the systems and process thinking, right? And so you don't have to code anymore to do any of this stuff. The AI does just build itself if you can think in the systems and process, so it stays organized.
let's unpack that a bit, right? So you mentioned systems and process. So even for me, like if I were to prompt for a copy, I break it down into like 7 to 8 steps. So that's my own internal system of how I break things down. Can you give us an example of how does a business take one use case and break down their process? What does that look like?
So just like you're describing, I think we as people tend to skip a bunch of steps when we think about the work we do. And so usually we find is when you really sit down and force people to be like, okay, but then how do you do that? Okay, that actually sounds like 3 steps right there. And you kind of pull apart what is the unspoken logic that might exist in a process. There are a lot of ways to do this. One of the most straightforward ways is to make a process map if something is more complicated. The other way is to really just say, hey, Audrey, if you had to teach me how to write copy like you do, what would be your best effort and way of breaking that down in a way that I could follow? Okay, that's probably the start of what the playbook could look like. And then one of the best things I really like about getting to make these processes that AI runs is it's really fast to iterate, right? So, you could think, okay, here are the different steps and start running it. And then you're like, oh, actually step 4 might need to switch to step 5. And so you have a really fast feedback loop to get better about your process.
Oh, interesting. When you mentioned it, I also thought about, my own kind of workflows. And sometimes I realized that as a copywriter in the past, I would used to come up with copy, just, skip all the micro steps in my head, right? But then when I had to prompt for AI, with AI, I had to teach it almost how I came to that landing page copy. So
Totally
figuring out what are all the steps before. And I realized that it actually took a very structured way of thinking that I think that doesn't come as naturally to everyone. So it's almost like training yourself to view things in a different lens so that AI understands you from that lens.
I completely agree. It's I think I've seen it really most similar to people's ability to delegate, right? Like delegating to somebody else is actually really hard. You don't like wake up, or you're not born with the ability to delegate. Usually you have to like learn from somebody that's showing you stuff, or like you try delegating, it doesn't quite work, and you kind of build your own way of how to empower somebody else to do, work the way that you want or need it done, or the outcome you need. And so it's just like that, but for AI, you have to learn it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the more specific you are with your micro steps or instructions, then I guess the more AI understands what you want. So I think also being able to build this ability to break down your own thought process, see your work in systems, is very important. I've learned now that I can no longer just be a creative. I need to be a creative person and a structured person at once. That's where like AI comes in. So Rachel, having said all of those things, would you be able to share what it actually looks like? Do you have a kind of demo or something that we can share with the audience so they know what it looks like in practice?
Yeah, I have one that I pulled up. So if I were to zoom out for a second, so what we do is we take processes and we turn them into AI playbooks that AI will run. What that looks like is usually we're writing that process out first in a Google document or like just completely outside of the tool we're using. And the reason is that gives us more space to actually think about, like you're saying, how we want to break up the work into the smaller tasks. Then once we create that process, and I'll show you the structure in a second, then we have this philosophy we call it own the playbook, rent the tech. So you can actually run that playbook that you wrote in any tool. So you could run it in Claude Skills, you could run it in ChatGPT, custom GPTs. You could run it in like Microsoft Copilot agents if you want to. Like really any tool out there that can follow instructions, you could run a playbook in it. And what's nice about that is then you're actually building like your operations as an asset that you own instead of these tools. So I pulled up, again, you can playbook anything. So I could go through so many different examples, but I wanted to pull up one of my unexpected favorites, which is my project planning playbook. And the reason that it's unexpected is because you might think project planning, that's not sexy. Like we're not gonna do like, some marketing thing or making an analysis or report or research or contract review or something. But actually, once I created this playbook, I realized, wow, like I plan projects all the time. And you know what? If you actually turn project planning into a process, then not only for us, we saw like our projects, we were planning them better. which means they go smoother. You don't have like, down the line, oh, we didn't think through blah, 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 or we didn't decide who's going to own XYZ. And then I'll show you one of the coolest things is this actually sets it up so that then the AI can even help you execute the project more easily.
Wow. Would love to see that.
Yeah, so this is a fun one. So let me see if I can screen share. All right, can you see this?
Yes,
Claude?
perfect.
Okay, great. This little demo account I have, so this is not the full glory, I will say, of the project planning playbook that I use. I guess I probably used it twice today. But this will give you a good idea of what I'm talking about. So in Claude, in skills, what I've done is I've uploaded my project planning playbook. And really, again, a playbook is a process. And so for it to be a playbook, we say it needs 4 components. It needs to have a trigger, which is what starts the playbook. It then needs to have inputs. So what is the AI going to ask for before it starts running the playbook? And then it needs to have steps. And so in here I have step 1, step 2, etc. And then the very last thing is it needs outputs. And then inside here, for each of the steps, so let's go to this one. We have a lot of very specific instructions, and probably don't have time to go into all this today, but basically, kind of like you're saying, just the more specific you are, and we have some ways that you can get really specific to make sure that it follows these instructions. And so if you, I'm sure you've seen tons of different skills setups in your day, right? I would describe this as like the playbooking method helps you write a skill that's structured as a process versus there are a lot of other ways to build skills, right? Different structures.
Can you explain that? What do you mean by helping you to build skills as a process?
Yeah. So when you, I don't think I have any here of like non-playbook skills, but a skill really is just saving instructions in your Claude account that then the AI can use next time you're doing that type of task. Yes. And so it could be as easy, or an example of another type of skill would be if you wanted like a brand guidelines skill that had all your brand guidelines. That doesn't need to be structured as a step-by-step process. It'd be a little more like a reference guide or doc, right? Versus this is a skill structured as like a playbook where it's very specific of like that, you want that step-by-step process. Does that make sense?
I see. So when you're structuring your playbook, basically it needs to wait for step 1 to be done before it goes to step 2. So then it forces it down a very systematic kind of funnel.
Correct. So
Okay,
then it's
awesome.
more reliable and you can actually trust it to do more in-depth work.
Got it. Yeah, I think also because when you mentioned a brand guide, I also have a brand guide skill. So in that brand guide skill, for listeners who may be new to it, I put in information like my company colors, fonts, logos, XYZ, right? So then it knows how to build a document that looks like close with copies document. In the same way, like in that case, I'm giving it a ton of knowledge, but I don't have to necessarily get it to follow each step because it's just drawing from that pool of knowledge. Whereas I think what Rachel is also sharing is a very systematic way of thinking because it's forcing it to go through each step, and even you have things like wait till you confirm step 1, right, before you move to step 2. I think that helps the process as well.
Yeah, totally. It's like almost the skill you're describing is like a context skill, right? Versus this, is the process oriented. So tons of use cases for skills, right? And I think that's actually all these AI tools have tons of different ways to use them. And so it's about, learning the methods that work for you. But
how does this playbook play out?
Yes. So this playbook, so once I have it saved, and I'll just run it as our way to see what the steps are. I can say, help me plan, and I can just, if you do / you can actually search for the skill. And then I will say, let's start there. So what it's going to do is it's going to go read that skill.
So while I'm waiting for the skill to load, I wanted to ask Rachel, how long does it take for you to personally develop a skill?
It's a good question. And how I make playbooks is I outline them by hand and then I use AI to fill in the instructions, but then I do still go through and review and edit and like make sure that it works because I want the process to be something that like I trust. So it's pretty fast, but I will say it's probably a little bit slower than a lot of people that are like, oh, I just want AI to generate everything for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. So load up the skill, and then what it's doing is, as you can see, it's already following step 1. So for this one, it's saying, okay, well, I don't really, I don't have the project that you're trying to do at all. So you need to share all this context, which is great. So I'll say, okay, so the context, we're working on, let's see, recording an awesome podcast with Audrey, and want to make a cool demo. Goal, explain playbooking, constraints. Of course, you can't type when you're trying to, but it's okay. AI can understand typos. How it worked. So let's do that. And so what this is, and I want to pause on this while it's running, is it's following my first step, which if I go in here, is I told it like, okay, a vague pitch, which is what I use to describe the start of a project, produces a vague plan. And so it's going to ask me for any information across the context, goal, constraints, and success criteria.
Yeah.
Ask the clarifying questions, and if still unclear, ask more focused batch. And so you can see now that it did that. I'm going to say make assumptions.
I like that Claude asks a lot of clarifying questions, and I realized that Claude asks better questions than ChatGPT. ChatGPT doesn't typically ask questions to just, okay, run. But Claude does ask you a little bit more.
That's funny because I've observed the same thing. And then whenever you're playbooking, you want to think about like, do I want it to ask questions? And so actually for a playbook, so we say like, if you write a good playbook, it should run the same in any tool. But if you run that playbook in Claude, you don't specify it, it's definitely going to ask you follow-up questions, right? So if you don't want that, just putting that in your playbook, don't ask any follow-up questions. Like for this one, I think it would have asked more follow-up questions, but I had said in here, do not proceed past 2 rounds, right? And so then now it's going to step 2, so brainstorm approaches. I use an approach called the 1-3-1, which is come up with 3 options and recommend one end result. And so that's what it's done here. Sounds good. And so you can see it's following my playbook. So step 3 of this one is to determine the timeline and tasks.
Wow.
When does the progress record? Today, what playbook you're demoing? I'm going to actually say LinkedIn post playbook. And then, nope. And so that's doing step 4. And it's making the task list. I can say it looks good. And then step 5. So in our project planning process, before we were using AI, just stop here, right? Okay, made a plan.
Yeah.
But what's great is because AI is helping me plan the project, I could add another step, which is like, hey, AI, you know what you can do.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what tasks you could actually start on? Yeah.
Wow.
And I can say like, yep, looks good. And then I have it make a final plan. And then I believe I have this one also sending into ClickUp. Yeah. So I don't know if my demo board is connected.
Got it. So you also add additional connectors so that then you can ship it to like a ClickUp or any other platform.
Yeah.
And then you can review it there.
Exactly. And then for playbooks, what's great is like it's just as easy as, let's find that step. Add to ClickUp. It's just as easy as saying like, use ClickUp. Now, if you were using a custom tool, you'd want to put the custom tool name in here. But yeah, AI is pretty smart. So yeah.
That's so cool.
So yeah, now it's trying to create it in my actual board. So we'll pause there. But yeah, so that's a playbook. And again, this is a really simple one for something that every single person plans projects, right? Yes. And so what we've seen is like this, once we started using this as a team, we measured it. We started doing 3 times the number of projects because they're just planned better. And then AI does like half of it before you even start. Yeah. And this is the exact same approach you can do for like contract review for potential brand partnerships, for example, or writing your newsletter or running and pulling. Like I just did a webinar this morning for our community, and we have a playbook that pulls all of the webinar registration data, who showed up, what questions were asked in the chat, pulls it versus the transcript, produces this really lovely analysis of like what are some opportunities to improve the webinar for next time. Again, all a playbook, all in this exact same structure. So it's very
super cool.
very powerful. Yeah.
I think also the possibilities are endless, right? You just showed one use case, but I'm sure if you are listening, you probably have so many other amazing use cases that you can really start thinking of even as you watch Rachel's demo. Now, Rachel, you said this playbook can be applied across different tools, right? Do you have a personal favorite?
I'd say it's tough. The tools, especially ChatGPT and Claude, I kind of view them as like really competitive sisters. Like they're just always going to be kind of outdoing each other a little bit. So I actually also really like that I can move my playbooks across these tools, and it's a huge benefit. I will say our company does run off of Claude, so it does help in a team to have one tool, and Claude's quite good, and they have a lot of, again, like the connectors and all those features and stuff. But yeah, I like them both.
I started with ChatGPT. That was my first love. Then Claude came into the picture. Then I was like, so should I try a new lover? Then I moved on to Claude. But then I realized that I still wanted to, like yourself, keep ChatGPT because you never know, right? When there could be something new that comes out. And it's still great at certain functions. So having both tools, I think also knowing when to use each tool, that also helps in the process. For me, also for writing, especially, I would recommend using Claude. And also really testing out what Rachel already demoed, the skills function, because it's so powerful when you start thinking in skills, not just in minor copy tweaks. So Rachel, what do you think the future of operations could look like for most companies?
I mean, I think it's going to look like this. Like, I think we're going to spend a lot more of our time thinking about how the work should be done rather than doing it. I'll actually give you like a wild example from last week. So I was pretty sick last week, and being out sick one day, okay, but the second day I'm like, man, like I have got to get stuff done. Well, I went and I opened up my laptop and I clicked the button on my computer that lets me like talk to my computer, and I just told my AI, okay, run my todaying playbook, which is the playbook that runs my morning routine, and I have that playbook actually connected to I think like 7 other playbooks that do all my sales tasks, that will follow up on proposals, that will do marketing reporting, and that's scheduling meeting, like all these different things. And my AI ran for quite some time, but then once it finished, I was like, wow, this is actually like, that's pretty productive today from bed of clicking one button and saying, run my today routine, and I've worked to set up the system that then makes that possible, but all it is playbooks and making sure it has access to the right data and tools to be able to do the work. And so I think you can imagine, like, you go to the beach and you are enjoying your day, and it's like, okay, well, let me just kick off this one thing that creates then now 20 things that the AI is doing for me, following the process or playbook that I've already outlined. So
Wow.
I think that's how companies will operate, and it's already how we're operating as a team. It's what we teach businesses that we work with, and how to operate. So I just think that's the future, and the future's here.
Wow. And it's like, Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week. I think right now it's going to be very, very possible for most people to really start building out systems to help them get things done. And Rachel, for yourself, how do you think companies need to evolve and adapt? Because I do know, at least in my region, although companies are saying they want to be open to AI, I sense a lot of resistance because it takes up so much time, manpower, bandwidth, and resources to even think about operationalizing certain parts of their business. So what do you have to say to business owners who are still on the fence?
I think it's a tough place to be in, because the reason you're on the fence is because you probably have a lot of other stuff on your plate, right? It's not like you have nothing to do and so you're sitting there going, no, we still don't want to do the AI thing, right? You have other priorities. I think what's challenging is how long are you willing to wait on this becoming a priority? And that's just every business and every industry is kind of playing a gamble, right? I'm not really, I don't subscribe to this way of thinking in a fear-based sense, but if I just really look at like the math of you can have companies that run on this stuff and you have companies that don't, it's really hard to imagine how the companies that don't will continue to stay competitive, right? And so I think one thing that's hard is like you don't have the time right now, and this is going to take time to learn how to do, to set up. And so hopefully, you have that on your priority list, and or it's got to be on there soon, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's also, it's not a matter of like no time, right? It's about whether you prioritize it. And a lot of companies, if you feel like you are okay where you're at, you may be okay for now, but what happens next when everybody is already moving on to the next wave?
The bar is
Are you
moving.
prepared? Yes.
Yeah, the bar, it's a continuously moving bar, right? So even if we actually talked to teams like this pretty often that were like, they felt really good about their AI usage because they were using custom GPTs a couple years ago, but then they've stayed at that state, and the bars move well past that. So
Yes.
yeah.
And what advice would you give to, let's say, a founder first? So someone running their own company, what is one piece of advice you would give them?
Around AI adoption or prioritizing it, or
Yes, around AI adoption. Like, what is one piece of advice you would tell them, like you wish all founders would know or think about?
yeah, I mean, I would tell them so many things. Yeah, I think we're lucky to work with, our clients really trust us. And so I know it's really weird, just going back to say that the first thing you work on, especially if you're adopting playbooking, like your first playbook should not be your highest profile, highest ROI playbook. You should really prioritize momentum. And our clients trust us and do that. And they are always like, wow, I'm so glad we did that because now we understand. Now we can actually make smart investments versus, I just see people really, really get stuck on a really hard first project. It's like saying, well, I haven't really been hiking before, but like, let's go do that super, tall one over there. That looks like that's going to be promising. It's like, well, or we could go for like a nice, mild hike.
Yeah,
you know. And so, yeah, I think you'll set yourself up for success better if you prioritize momentum.
And what would you say to an employee who is in a company that is navigating AI?
So, also controversial. I think it's a really tough place to be right now if you are waiting for your employer to invest or decide to do this stuff because you're choosing to move at the pace of your employer. This is a lot more of a personal skill set at the end of the day. And, I know there's a lot of amazing companies out there, but at the end of the day, we see companies are companies. And like you said, of the news around a lot of layoffs and stuff. And so I think I just really encourage people, again, I know it's hard, but you have to prioritize finding the time to learn and experiment and build the skill set. And I just really caution people of like waiting and moving at the pace that their employer chooses. I think that's, not the best approach.
Yes. I think one thing I'll add to that is I was previously also an employee before I moved into my working on my own consultancy, right? And the biggest change that I made personally was learning how to learn fast. In the past, as an employee, you just wait for the brief to come and then you work on it. And maybe you have mentors around, maybe you're growing, together with your team, which is great. But one thing I've also learned coming out of it is there is so much to learn as a business owner, and you have to learn the skill of learning. And I feel like a lot of employees, they may be in a comfortable place like I was, where I felt I didn't feel a need to learn as much. But with AI, I really and I strongly feel that you need to want to start learning and feel that desire to learn so that, like what Rachel said, you can either value add or you can be the operator, right? Or you harness the skill sets for yourself and open up new opportunities. So AI can be both very scary but also full of beauty if you know how to leverage it. And I think in today's podcast, we covered so many great use cases. So Rachel, thank you so much again for joining us. Where can our listeners find you and who should reach out to you?
Yeah, this was so fun. I always love every time that we get to jam and talk about this stuff. So I hope this was helpful for anybody listening. And I would love if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn. I hang out there all the time. Our company is AMP. Our website is Run on AMP if you're interested in learning more about playbooking. But shoot me a message on LinkedIn. I would love to connect.
So if you are still thinking about it, no more sitting on the fence. It's time to take action today. Reach out to Rachel, learn more about what her company and her amazing team is doing. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, Rachel, and thank you folks for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the bell for more actionable AI and marketing insights. We'll see you next week. Take care.